Hello, and welcome to the Storyteller's Mission with Zena Del Lowe, a podcast for artists and storytellers about changing the world for the better through story. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. His name is Terry Whalen. He's the author of a book called Book Proposals That Sell, 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. And we get a lot of questions at the Storyteller's Mission about business parts of how you succeed in this business, what you need to do on the business aspect of it. So Terry is here to fill in that gap. And before we get started, I just want to say I apologize. My throat is a little hanky at best because I've been sick, but I'm very, very glad I didn't want to put off having Terry on the show because he has so much knowledge to share with us today. So welcome, Terry. Welcome to the Storyteller's Mission with Zena Del Lowe.
Thank you, Zena. Just really an honor to be here with you and have this opportunity.
So tell us a little bit, why did you write your book?
I actually wrote my book. The original version was published in 2014 because I wrote the book as a frustrated acquisitions editor because I was working at a publishing house, and I'd written a lot of books, but I'd never worked as an acquisitions editor inside, and I didn't really understand what I needed from authors in order to be able to get them a book contract. So I wrote Book Proposals That Sell out of my own frustration, trying to help people put together better pitches and be able to get book contracts from publishers. I'd written a number of books and book proposals myself, but I just never seen on the inside of a publishing house how that document is used. And so I tried to help authors in my book have better pitches. And basically, Zena, what I've learned over the years is that lots of people have used my book to get an agent, to get a large advance, but basically every book author needs to write a proposal, because this is basically your business plan as far as what you're going to do once you get your book written and get it out there into the world. So it's really quite an important document, I think.
So in essence, this is a book that you wrote to help writers help you help them.
Yes, I know that's a little roundabout way to get to that, but yes, that's what it was. That was my goal originally, was to get better proposals from authors. And that kind of thing did happen with my original book. Lots of people got agents, they got book contracts. I met an author the end of May at the Blue Ridge Conference, as a matter of fact, and she told me that she'd gotten 3 book contracts using the information that's in my book proposal book. And I think that's amazing,
It is. And I find that the same thing is true. Like, as a writer on this side of it, as a writer, I mean, I can't tell you how many pitches I put together to try to pitch an idea to different places. But then once I was on the other side of it, then I started to realize, well, what do I actually need to hear from writers to know what to do with it? And it really changed my whole process of how to put together a pitch for the industry, because now I understand it from a different side. It's a very fascinating thing.
And what I find is there aren't many people that are kind of like us, that are writers, as well as people that are on the inside of the industry, to really understand how it works. So, I mean, most of my editor friends, for example, they edit. That's kind of what they do. So they don't even necessarily teach at writers' conferences. I mean, they may go and meet with people, but they don't necessarily do a workshop or anything, where I feel, that's part of my thing, is to get out there and help people in my workshops, but also to write as well as be the editor.
I think that's great. And it's interesting because lately I've had people coming to me and hiring me to help them with book proposals. Not the book itself, but the actual book proposals, because it is its own sort of art. if you will. It's its
It
own area
is.
of expertise. And you can have a great book and a bad proposal, and nobody's going to see the book.
You can. It's a lot of it's, pitching to the right person at the right time, at the right place with the right stuff. And I understand a lot of those rights have to line up for something to actually happen, but I think there are standard elements that are in every pitch or every proposal. And that's what I was really trying to do in this book, is to help people. And I've written two proposals that got six-figure advances. So obviously I kind of know a little bit about
What you're
what it
talking
takes.
about.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, here it is, book proposals that sell. This is what it looks like. This is the book that people should read to know the secrets of how to write a book proposal that sells. Because every single writer has to write a book proposal to go along with their project in order to get the powers that be to look at it and to get a contract. So Terry, could you walk us through? Obviously, you want people to read the book, and there's going to be more information they're going to get from actually reading the book. But can you walk us through, like, what are maybe the three biggest mistakes that writers make when they're trying to put together a book proposal?
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that people make is they will say my book is unique. There's no competition out there. Well, that's not true. I mean, every book is going to compete in the marketplace. So they don't really understand where their particular book and topic fits in the marketplace when they say that kind of thing.
And not
So
only
that,
is it not true, but it's also a disadvantage if it is true.
yeah,
Because what we need is something that's marketable. And if it's truly unique, we don't know how to sell it now because there's no audience for it.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, they've got to be able to identify where their niche is in the market, and it's a very important element to sort of ascertain that your book isn't for everybody. It's for a particular audience, and if you haven't identified that, then that's a real issue. And then then there are these people, particularly on the novel side, that say that their book is a sci-fi gothic contemporary or something. They mix all the categories together. They don't really understand that you have to fit into a particular category in order to be able to have something that everybody's going to go, oh, okay, I know what that is. I know where that fits. I know where we can put that in the bookstore. There's all those kinds of questions that really the writer has to answer up front
And a lot of
to be
people
successful.
mistakenly think that if it covers all those different things, that it's making it more accessible, but actually the opposite is true. You have to identify the genre, you have to identify the specific type of story it is so that you know who to sell it to, so that you know where you're going to set it up in the bookstore.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, certain agents and editors cover certain genres. So, I mean, if you send a sci-fi book to somebody that doesn't care about science fiction, you're just wasting their time and your time both when you do that kind of thing.
And that's not just true with the powers that be, that's also true with the audience. Because there are certain rules, right, in each genre that you need to understand and write those to the satisfaction of the audience that's reading those types of books.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Good. All right. So those are two big mistakes. What's the third?
I would say the third is that many writers figure that the publisher is going to decide the title for their book. And so they just throw some words on there that say working title, and they don't put a lot of thought and energy and effort into it. Where I've found through the years that if I pitch a really good title, then that will make it through the entire process. And so it'll be there. It'll be the ones that's published. So authors need to pour a lot of energy into it. I've had other authors not be willing to tell me their title. They say, "Oh, I have a secret title." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, you're good luck with that secret title." I don't know what I
Why
don't know
would
how
that?
you
Why would they do that? They're afraid it's going to get stolen?
Yeah, they're afraid somebody else is going to steal their title because you can't really copyright a title. So I understand kind of where they're coming from in some ways, but in other ways, I think authors need to understand that one of the worst places you want your book to be. I've been in these title meetings where we have a whole whiteboard full of words, and we're trying to figure out what in the heck we're going to call this book that's been presented to us. We've contracted the book. We're gonna publish it, but yet we don't know what we're going to call it. So marketing and sales and editorial, all these people are sitting around trying to figure out what we're going to do. Well, the one person that's not in the room when that happens is the author, which is terrible for that author. I mean, we're going to call it something that they probably won't like at the end of the day, or maybe they will like it. I don't know. But one of the ways that you can sort of protect yourself from that happening is by really putting some great energy into that title, and putting alternative titles too. A good title has typically three to five words, or maybe it's a one-word title even. But you've got to realize that title has got to be able to fit on a spine of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're not even thinking about that. You're just thinking about, what are you going to call this? So it's got to be much more intentional, and a lot more effort to it than what it seems like on the surface. I'm going to just put working title there and then write your book, type thing. So that's what really doesn't work.
That's really interesting. It would never occur to me to not have a title if I was pitching a project. Okay, so part of what I have found on my side, now remember, I'm in film business, you're in the publishing business. It's different, but there are overlaps.
Right.
And I find that one mistake that a lot of authors or screenwriters make is that they don't do their research when they're submitting a proposal or a pitch to a particular production company. It's clear that they've created one pitch proposal, and then that's what they're sending to everybody. And it's disrespectful. It's actually insulting to particular production companies because it's not been honed and reworked to be appropriate for that company. Do you find that that's true on the publishing side of it?
It is true. You'll get these emails where they've copied everybody, on the email, or it's a blind copy and it goes out to you, but you wonder how many thousand other people it's going out to at the same time. Dear editor slash literary agent, nothing personalized. You don't know whether it's just a spam thing or what's happening with it. So yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I found, I've worked inside 3 different publishing houses. And so the other thing that bothers me sometimes is when I get a pitch that's to like my predecessor, somebody that used to be there, but they're no longer there. So it's like, yeah, do your research and due diligence here to try to figure out who's actually in the acquisitions chair to make the decisions on your book and move it forward through the process.
Good. All right. I know my voice. Sorry.
You're fine.
One of the mistakes that I often find too is that people assume that all the pitch requires is an explanation of the story, and that's as far as they go. But in my world, the pitch has to do more than that. The pitch does have to give a story synopsis. We need to understand what the story is. We have to understand genre. We have to understand these things. But we also, in my world, we have to also understand budget. particular casting considerations, location considerations, what kind of film we're thinking, what kind of marketing plan we're talking about. Would this be a wide release? Would this be a limited release? Would this be a TV series, a limited TV series? I mean, what kind of show are we talking about here? And who are the players involved that could make this whole thing come together, because there's a lot more money at stake in Hollywood. So you have to be able to say, here are the players that are already involved, or here's the star actor associated with this project already who could get this greenlit, or blah blah blah. So
Sure.
it's a lot more than just story. And I'm assuming that that's true on the literary side as well. So can you talk to us about some of the pieces that go into a pitch proposal for publishing?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And a lot of people think that if they're not in publishing, they think that the publisher is going to take care of 100% of the marketing, which isn't true. I mean, every publisher, whether they're, Simon & Schuster, Random House, or Morgan James, where I work, they're going to say that 80% of the responsibility is going to be the authors. And so more and more of that marketing responsibility is pushed to the author. So one of the things that you can do to get attention in your proposal is show that you understand that, and that you have a plan, a practical plan for your book about how to get it out there and how to reach the audience. I mean, I've talked to a lot of authors over the years about this kind of element. And so I remember years ago when I was a cook, I had an author call me and make their pitch. And I asked them what kind of marketing ideas they had. And they sort of, you could hear them smiling on the phone. They said, I have a really cute granddaughter. I think we ought to do television commercials. And, I kid you not, Zena, it was all I could do to keep from laughing at this first-time author on the phone. Because, I mean, think about it, folks. How many television commercials do you see related to books?
You don't.
Well, the only one I can think of is James Patterson, who's a billionaire. Sure, they put him on talking about his books, but most of us will never appear on television. So you've got to come up with practical things that you can actually do as an author to market your book. So one of the practical things that I teach a lot of times when I teach about proposals is a practical idea is, what they call is naked mail postcards, and so you can ask your publisher, okay, if you print 2,000, 3,000, whatever your number is there, if they'll print that many postcards for you, then I will buy my stamps, mail them to individuals, or I'll take them around to bookstores where I live for bag stuffers. In other words, I'm not going to just waste that postage. In other words, it's a partnership. You're going to print them, which doesn't cost a whole lot. You're going to send them to me. I'm going to get them distributed into people's hands. So that's kind of a practical idea that any of us can do, and we can actually sell books through that process.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's one of the things that's really changed, I think, over the years in publishing, is that it's no longer the bookstores and the publishing houses that are really promoting these books. The authors now have to have a platform. So in the proposal, then, it would help also for writers to be able to articulate what their current platform is and how that might be helpful in terms of selling books. For example, I teach at writers' conferences. So if I have a book, I can bring that book and try to sell it at writers' or at least put it in the bookstore. Or I can, I teach at college. So it could be, I mean, depending on the type of book, I suppose if it's fiction, it wouldn't apply. But if it was a teaching book, it could be part of the curriculum. So it's going to sell a certain number of books. I might be able to have connections with Christian colleges around that might use my book as part of their curriculum if I had a book on story or structure or whatever. So those are the types of things that would be helpful to see in a proposal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the higher the numbers that you can have, the better, And so, social media is a big thing now, but also the real key is your own email list. How big is that email list? Do you have 10, 20, 100,000 people on that list, or do you have 300? You're gonna say completely different things depending on how big that email list is.
Okay.
And
And this is where it gets frustrating for writers and for myself included, because the thing is, when you're a writer, you don't want to spend all that time trying to build an email list. How are you even doing that? Well, that's where you're starting to blog. You do these types of things so that you can build your email list and get followers, but it's very time consuming. And for myself, I'll just say that's one reason why I don't have my own blog. I'm a guest contributor to Edie's blog, for the right
right,
conversation. And I
right.
contribute one article a month. But if I have a book that comes out, now I can take advantage of Edie's list. And, that could be a promotional thing or something. I'm assuming. I don't know. I've never actually
You
asked, but
can't,
I'm assuming
you
that
can,
she would do.
yes, absolutely.
So I want to just mention that to the writers here that when they hear that, I know so many people that are just like, immediately defeated. And for understandable reasons, because it's exhausting. I mean, if I tried to write, it takes me so long to write one blog post that's really good, that if that's what I had to do to get enough people on my list to sell a potential book, I would never have time to write a book. So it can be a real catch 22. So I think there are some tricks that people can do to expand their network more organically without wasting time on some of these things. And I think you
There
agree
are,
with
there
that.
are,
Can you talk about
there
that?
are. And and my own experience was that in 2007, Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, invited me to Los Angeles. He was having this mega book marketing university that he had out there. I had a little literary agency in Arizona back then, and so they invited me to come, and so I took pitches during that conference. But I sat there with 400 people and listened to all the different speakers. And it's almost like I woke up, Zena, during that conference, because at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. So I knew that these publishers made pretty books. They, really attractive. They got them out there in the bookstores and all that. What I didn't understand was that it's really the author's activity that moves the book out of that bookstore and into people's hands. Whether you're on a podcast like this, whether you're on a radio station, whether you're on a guest blog post, a newspaper article, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to devote some energy in order to be able to do that and get that out there successfully. The publisher isn't going to do it. I mean, you're the one that is really more focused on your own book than anybody else out there. I mean, one of the speakers at Mega Book Marketing University was Jack Canfield. Now, Jack has written this book called The Success Principles. And I've got the book on my shelf here, but the very first success principle says that I will take 100% responsibility for my own success. Now, none of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want the publisher to do it, or a publicist, or somebody other than me to do this kind of thing. Well, during that conference, I decided that I was going to take 100% responsibility for my own success. All I had back then was I had a little terrywhalen.com website. So I launched a blog in 2008, my blog, I write once a week on my blog, and I've got over 1,600 entries in my blog. I mean, there are over 400 or 500 people that get it on email every week when I do this kind of thing. And so it has a big impact and influence out there in the marketplace. And I figure, hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I have over 180,000 followers on Twitter. I have over 19,400 connections on LinkedIn. I have over 4,900 Facebook friends. So I'm just focused on those three platforms there, but those I post on those platforms, 12, 15 times a day. Now people go, wow, how do you do that? That must just suck up your whole day. No, it doesn't. I've got a system that I developed and that I teach on at writers conferences and stuff, but I spend about 30 minutes a day doing my social media. I don't spend all day on Facebook or something like that, because I just don't have time to do that. I'm doing other things throughout the day. So there are shortcuts and ways that any of us can do it. We're all going to start small on our email list, but be building that email list, whether it's through, MailChimp or Constant Contact or, ConvertKit or wherever you do that kind of thing. But every one of us need to take those kind of steps to build that audience out there for our stuff. And your audience and everything will be different than mine, but faithfully doing it is, I think, where the payoff is.
Yeah, it is tricky. It's a really hard time in that regard because there is such a limited amount of time, and a lot of us, like I have a really hard time posting frequently on social media. So I had to hire somebody to do it for the Storyteller's Mission. And she's
Sure.
wonderful. And what she does is she takes, we try to post meaningful content for people that are actually going to be helpful. Because that's the other thing. I hate fluff. I don't want my time wasted, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So
Sure.
I think it's really important to offer value to people. That I think there's a lot of just wasted stuff that's being posted. And one of my
I
gifts
think there
in
is
the
too.
world is that I won't post meaningless content. If I post something, I think that it matters. But in any case, my point is that this can be a real difficult thing for a lot of people.
It can be, but
It works because you can't do everything.
yeah, you have to have a plan that works, that's focused, but you also have to understand that part of what's happening out there on social media and why it's really not a complete waste of time is that people need to hear about your book usually at least 7 or 8 times, they've proven, before somebody's going to reach into their wallet and actually buy it.
Right.
And the other thing that you need to do is you need to get people that have read your book to write a review about it, because I was listening the other day to Robert Cialdini, who's an American psychologist that wrote this book called Influence. It's out there, and he was saying that 95% of the people that buy a product online have read a review before they buy that product. And I think it's a tragedy. I see it happen out there a lot, that these authors get a book, they get it out there into the market, and they have no reviews. Nobody's gone by there and said anything at all about their book. And all of us need to be working at that. I mean, there are over 4,500 new books that come out every day. Now that includes the self-published stuff, but it's a huge volume of new information that's flooding out there into the market. So just devote a little bit of attention to it every day is what I would encourage you to do, because that consistency will really pay off for you in the long run.
Okay, so there's a couple things there I want to pull out, and then I want to ask another question. So principle number 1 is that try to get people to review your work and then post that and make sure that that's out there so people can read the reviews, because people want to read reviews. I'm one of them. I read the reviews and I want to see good ones, because my time is limited and I don't want to waste my time on something that's average or mediocre. So if you have excellent reviews, and they should be legit, it shouldn't be your mother. It should be legitimate people that are actually posting good reviews. So ask them to do it. And
Right.
principle number 2, if you like somebody's work, do them a favor. Post a review for them. Even if you think, oh, they're already a famous, successful author, it doesn't matter. They need it too, because the world has changed. If it's this podcast and you've been listening for a while and you think, oh, it's established. No, it isn't. Nothing is. Post a review. Do a favor to the people that you support and the content that they're producing, and write a review for them. I write reviews for companies that I like on Yelp. I always try to do those types of things because they need them, and they need current ones. If only you have reviews from, say, 2021, now you're irrelevant already. So those are the principles. But now this brings me to my next question. So if 80% of the work is the author's responsibility in terms of marketing and all that, and of course we take 100% responsibility, I get that, but still, if today's authors really do have to do about 80% of the work of promotion, then the question then becomes, and I get this question a lot, why should I go to a traditional publisher who's going to take a percentage of all of this, and it's all of my work that I'm putting into it? Why wouldn't I just self-publish? Now, I have an answer that I give for that, but I want to hear your answer.
Well, the problem, in a sense, with self-publishing is that you have to do it all yourself. That's the issue. Where if you work with a traditional house or even an independent publisher like Morgan James that I work with, you get your book broadly out there into the marketplace. So for example, at Morgan James, we're not just on Amazon. I mean, we're on over 1,800 online bookstores. So we sell at Target.com, for example. The other day I was looking for an image on one of my books that I brought into Morgan James. The very first place that popped up was at Target.com. So, that's part of what you get when you work with someplace like us, because you actually get your book out there broadly into the marketplace through that effort.
Okay.
The best publishing that I've found over the years is really more of a cooperative team effort, not just something that you decide you're going to do and so you do it. It's better to work with a group, to have colleagues, have people that you could bounce ideas off. Does this cover look good? Is this an attractive thing? Did I gather the right people to endorse my book and to say nice things about my book? Get that kind of feedback from people out there in the process, rather than just doing it on your own.
And if you have qualified people in the industry that are a part of your teammates, you might have to do a lot of the footwork, but they can give you ideas that you might not have thought of, and ways to promote your work that you might not have thought of on your own, that you might not even be aware exists. So there's a lot of possibilities there by putting your heads together. But I would
Absolutely.
like to say one other reason that I think it's important to go through a traditional publisher if you can. And this could change depending on maybe the type of project and who the audience is. There are some things that don't need a traditional publisher. But for the most part, what I think happens when you go through a traditional publisher is it vets your project, and all of a sudden it elevates it, even on a subconscious level, in the minds of the consumer. If the publisher has taken a risk on it, then it means that it was something worth publishing. Whereas there is so much noise now in self-publishing, it's really hard. There are very few projects that I have read that have been self-published that are actually up to par. There are a few, but most of them are not good enough to have been published, which is why they were self-published. And I believe that it is my job as a consumer to read the good things, to let the good things elevate, and then to not soil myself with the bad things.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of junk in the self-publishing community, but a few rise to the top. But those are the exception stories that everybody talks about, rather than the reality of what's going on. I do agree that there's a vetting process. I mean, even at Morgan James, I mean, we get 5,000 submissions a year and only do 200 books a year. So that means that there is a careful selection process of the books that actually get published out there.
Okay, so now this leads me to another question. I want you to tell us so that the people listening to this show know, what is a good offer? What is a good offer from a publisher? What should they be looking for? What are the markers?
One of the markers that anybody can do in this process is to look seriously at the reputation of the publisher making the offer to you. Google their name, complaints plus the name of that publishing house. See what pops up. I mean, sure, every publisher has people that complain about them. They can't be 100%, but you don't want to go with somebody that's, got pages and pages of complaints about them. Lawsuits, all that kind of thing. Those are some of the key markers, because I've seen some real garbage from some of these outfits that they tout that they're Christian. They tout that they're tied to Thomas Nelson or something like that, when in reality they're not. Their books are produced in the Philippines and they're only online. I mean, there's some real cautions I would give people about those kinds of things. But use your own wisdom, but also ask people, and use the tool that you have right in front of you called Google in order to find some good information about that. I've met authors that have spent $20,000 with these companies that are only online, and they take all the upsells and they get the sample screenplay and all that, and they're never going to make that money back. Zena, it's a real crime that kind of thing happens.
Well, and that's why it's important. Like, okay, so every deal is different. The same is true in, the screenwriting business and the Hollywood. Every deal is different. It depends on the type of project. Is it TV? Is it feature? Is it sketch? Is it sitcom versus hour long? I mean, there are so many. Is it streaming versus wide release, theatrical release? There are so many different factors. What's the budget? Writers in Hollywood get paid a lot based on the budget, but not everything is a union project. So if it's non-union, what are the decent markers of what you should be paid and that sort of thing? Because what I find is that, especially in Christendom, a lot of times people want writers to write something for peanuts, and it's not fair and it's not right. So I'm trying to, in my world, I try to give people a particular, like, what's the bottom of what you should do something for? What is, because you might decide, what, I'll do this for $10,000. It's worth it for me to do that.
Right.
But
Right.
then you have to have limits to what you're willing to do. And you have to know when to end it, or else it's just not worth your time. So I'm
Sure.
wondering if you could give us that information. Like, what is the minimum that you think a writer should be willing to take a deal for? Even though there's all
So,
sorts of different deals and different structures.
I don't really know. I mean, my literary agent has said that I've signed more work made for hire deals than anybody else that she knows.
What does that mean?
In other words, somebody's come to me and said, "Okay, Terry, I need this project done by this date. It's going to be this many words, 50,000 words. This is what I can do. This is what I can pay. I'm going to pay you a flat fee for it. You're going to give all your rights to me, and I'm going to do that." Now, I've done that kind of work over and over, because I've been a working writer. So, sometimes I do a book and I get paid $10,000. Other times I do it, I get a lot more than that. So it just all depends on the book and the deal and the project, and whether I get paid a flat fee up front, whether I get a royalty kind of contract. There's many different variables here. I can't really define it for you, I guess, because there just are so many different
Sure.
variables. But 20, 25 years ago, for example, an editor, Brahman Holman, came to me, sent me a rough manuscript. And this was in early November. And it was a diet book. Now, most diet books are published in January because people make New Year's resolutions, they go out and buy a diet book. Okay, so this particular diet started in First Baptist Houston. And so I looked over the rough material and I said, okay, I'm in. I'll write the rest of this book and I'll deliver it by the end of the month, 30 days. I said, the first thing I got to do though, I got to fly to Houston. I got to meet my co-author. And so they said, fine. So I got a plane ticket. I flew to Houston, walked into First Baptist Houston to meet my co-author. And I said, now my agenda is simple here. I'm just here to get chapters 9 through 20 or whatever it was. When I walked into this meeting, I'd never met Carol Lewis before in my life. And she looked at me and she said, 9 through 20, what are we talking about here? She had never seen the outline to the book. The editor had made the outline in this rough material. I said, oh man, I'm in big trouble here because I'm supposed to deliver a book by the end of the month. And so thankfully she had transcribed messages and, she had a number of things. And so I negotiated a deal with this particular contract that I got paid a bonus for every week that I was early.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote, they really wanted this book from me. And so I wrote 48,000 words in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I got 2 weeks of bonus. Now my name's on the cover of all those books. This is the foundation book for this ministry called First Place. The book has sold over 100,000 copies over the last 20, 25 years. I haven't been paid a dime on that book because I was a hired gun for the publisher. So I got all my money up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't just give you any parameters here because all these deals are different as far as the way they work at the end of the day.
Well, and for the record, that's primarily everything I've done as a writer for hire in Hollywood is always upfront, and they buy me out, and they come to me with an idea, I execute it. I got no ownership. I don't get back end money on that. I just got paid and now it's out of my hands.
Sure.
And that's frustrating in some ways, but on the other hand, you're done with it. You don't have to think about it again.
That's right.
Your hands. You just did your work and you're done. You got paid for your service.
And it was a good credit is the way I look at it. Some of these things I've done have sold, 60, 70,000 copies. And,
You still
I
claim
devoted
credit.
my weeks or my time to it to get it written, and it's out there still helping people. It's great.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So, is there anything else burning that you would like to share with people about your book proposals that sell? I mean, is there anything that you just think, man, if people knew this one thing, here's what they would do? And of course, they would run out and buy your book.
Well, and what I want people to realize too is they can get my book for free on ebook if they go to bookproposals.ws. That pulls up a web page, book funnel page, and they can download the book in whatever version they want. So they can get it for their Kindle or their Nook or their iPhone, their iPad. Why in the world would we do that? Well, we give that away, Zena, because at Morgan James, we've learned that if somebody gets the ebook version of my book, even if they get that for free and they start to read that ebook version, there's a high probability that they're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book.
Mhm.
So by giving away free ebooks, you're really driving print book sales,
Right.
which is kind of counterintuitive, but we've certainly found that works for us at Morgan James. So that's why I want people to go to bookproposals.ws and take a look at my book proposal book and download it for free.
And we have that link in the notes section here on the Storytellers Mission podcast. So please do go and download the free version. I'm one of those people, I want the hard copy because I underline and I circle and I make notes and I in the margins and I get ideas and I can't do that on an ebook.
Right.
I like to read my fiction on my Kindle, but when it's a self-help type book, I tend to like the hard copy. I'll be honest.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing. That's right.
Yeah. So that's great. Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate it. And this is all because a lot of people ask me questions about the business side of it. And the truth is, while I have a lot of knowledge on the filmmaking side, the publishing side, there's a lot of overlaps, but there's a lot of mystery for me too. So this is very, very
Right.
helpful. If people have questions about their story, or if they have something they would like to maybe pitch to you, can they do that? And if so, how would they go about doing that, Terry?
Well, I'm one of the more accessible people in the publishing community. Is one part of my reputation. People say that I'm one of the most accessible people that they know out there. So that's why even on my Twitter profile, if you go to just search for my name, Terry Whalen on Twitter, you'll see that in my profile, I say, I love to help writers. Let me know how I can help you. And I have my email address right there in my Twitter profile. It's my personal email address. And people may wonder, well, why in the world would you do that? Well, I want to be accessible to people. I want people to reach out to me. And if they need my help, I've got a lot of free stuff out there. So let's send them to that stuff. And then maybe they want me to help them publish their book through Morgan James or something else. Reach out to me and let's see what we can do.
That's great. And we have that link also in our notes section. By the way, I'm the same as you. I mean, I'm kind of a sucker, right? Like I really do genuinely want to help people. So I'm not always thinking about what I can get out of it. I mean, of course, I want people to buy my courses or I want them to buy my services if I can genuinely be helpful. But
Sure.
otherwise, I want to just be helpful to people. You know, I really do. I think that's part of our Christian worldview at work is that we want to be of service where we can. And I appreciate you for being of service. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you, Zena. Yeah, I realize that if I've done anything at all out there in the publishing world, it's because other people have helped me along the way. They've taught me how to do this stuff. So I feel very responsible and obligated to pass that on to other people. So that's part of what I do in these kinds of things.
And that's amazing. Okay, so Terry, I want to thank you so much for being on the Storytellers Mission. And everybody else out there, if you have a chance, we want to support each other. So download his free ebook on bookproposals.ws or order the hard copy now. Go ahead and do that. There's a link in the notes section of the website, book proposals that sell 21 secrets to speed your success. Every single writer has to write a proposal. You might as well learn from one of the best what should go into it and learn how to write a successful proposal because you're going to have to do it anyway. So why not speed up your success? And in the meantime, for those of you out there that are listening to this show, I want to encourage you to support the people that you read and the people you listen to. Write reviews. If you're a writer who's publishing things, ask people to read and review your work. Reciprocate. And continue to try doing those things that we can do to build up an audience, but to be of service to our audiences too, because that's just so important. We don't want to just be greedy and try to get things from people. We want to offer things to people.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Terry, again for being on the Storytellers Mission. And to everyone who's listening to the show, thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Mission with Zena Dello. May you go forth inspired to change the world for the better through story.